If you started Styx, Blades of Greed, thinking it's just about staying in the dark, crouching, and waiting for the guard to pass, I have news for you. The game gets much easier and much more fun when you start playing like the real Styx. That dirty, shifty, and efficient rogue who slips in and out without anyone realizing what happened. And look, these aren't tips for someone who's still learning which button is crouch. This is for those of you who've already triggered a silly alert, lost a run over a tiny detail, or found yourself thinking, man, there had to be a smarter way to get through here. So grab your poison and sharpen your blade, because I'm about to give you 10 advanced tips you need to know to master Styx. Blades of Greed and Stop Suffering from Mistakes, the game sometimes doesn't even explain properly. When I entered the swamp and ruin areas, I had to reprogram my brain against insects and mutants. It's not about staying out of the vision cone like you would with a human guard. It's about respecting sound. I play crouched, and from time to time, I simply stop for a second, because these enemies hear your haste. When you slow down, it feels like the whole map becomes safer, and you stop creating chases for no reason. The detail that saved me the most was starting to use amber vision to read the floor, not just to look for loot. Those blue bones are the kind of trap you step on once and never forget. It makes noise, gives away your presence, and still messes up your rhythm in a place where rhythm is everything. So I developed a slightly neurotic habit of checking the path before crossing, as if I were walking over crushed glass. And then comes the malicious part of the tip. If they react to noise, then I treat bottles as traffic control. Instead of picking a direct fight, I throw a bottle to pull attention exactly where I want it. And if there are toxic plants nearby, even better. I let the area do the dirty work while I stay in a safe position, just watching the chaos happen the right way. Now, when the game puts you in front of those giants and you feel like you can't just avoid them, I like the clean approach. Bolts to weaken them and a quick finisher, like an aerial kill, so it doesn't turn into a long, noisy fight. I'd much rather spend 2 or 3 certain actions than enter that cycle of running around that attracts more things, because in these biomes, a mistake almost always turns into a domino effect. The smartest way I found to evolve is to stop treating upgrades as permanent decisions and start treating them as mission loadouts. I take everything I can without fear, but I always keep my build with that "today I need this right now" mentality, because the game changes pace between acts and areas, and what works in one part might hinder you in another. The trick here is to use Jasper's workshops or Ren's cauldron to forget upgrades and reorganize your kit by act, as if you were swapping tools before a heist. I like it because it takes the weight off of making mistakes. You can try a crazy idea, see that it didn't fit your style, and go back to a more efficient version without feeling like you wasted hours. This makes the game lighter and more creative at the same time. In practice, I first prioritize everything that gives me situational control. Invisibility to reset mistakes without desperation. Possession to turn enemies into resources. And the more Batman-like gadgets to manipulate patrols and the environment without needing to touch anyone. When you build this foundation, any mission becomes less about surviving on improvisation and more about executing a plan, because you always have a button to vanish, a way to turn the tide using a target, and a tool to clear the path. Best of all, this reset encourages you to play with intention. If the area is open and full of sightlines, I pull more invisibility and mobility. If it's a corridor packed with guards and crossing routes, I pull more possession and distraction gadgets. You start to feel that there is no perfect build, only the right build for the moment, and that makes Styx much stronger without necessarily becoming overpowered. When I realized the game lets you treat the clone as walking noise, my playstyle changed instantly. Instead of trying to sneak past every situation, I started manufacturing chaos the right way. Best of all, these clones were designed for distraction and can be invested in with upgrades. So it's not just release and pray, it becomes a consistent tool to clear paths and control the room. The heart of the tip is simple and powerful. Keep up to 3 clones alive at once, meet the gang, and treat each one as a piece of your plan, not an emergency resource. From there, upgrades like increasing lifespan and adding smoke bombs upon death make the clone pay off twice. First, by drawing attention, and then by generating that perfect chaos for you to reposition, vanish, or finish someone off while they're still confused. My favorite use is the decoy clone for exactly that. You place the puppet in the most inconvenient spot possible, let the patrol bite the bait, and use the cloud to stun several at once. Party pooper. It's a great feeling when it works, because it feels like you broke the scene, without resorting to direct combat, just using the environment and enemy curiosity against them. And then comes the part that makes the game even more devious. Mind controlling a clone, my brother Clarence, to perform advanced scouting and read the room before committing to any route. When you want to turn stealth into a chaos laboratory, the idea of throwing a clone into Ren's cauldron, let me cook, is exactly the kind of thing I love in these games. You're not just avoiding being seen, you're inventing solutions with a tool the game clearly wants you to experiment with. What I like most about this tip is that it transforms poison into a remote control for the map, not just a silent kill. You start poisoning food and stills to create clean eliminations, like the Ratatouille goal, 5 kills. But in practice, you're planting small social time bombs. The guard doesn't die instantly. They keep walking and interacting, which gives you huge space to reposition without having to touch anyone. For me, poison works best when I stop thinking of it as assassination and start treating it as an agenda. I poison a spot I know will be consumed, and meanwhile, I make my way through, stealing, opening shortcuts, and observing patrol routes. When the enemy begins to wither, the area enters that sweet state of contained confusion. And that's where you reap the stealth profit. Nobody saw Styx, but everyone feels something is wrong. Now, the truly wicked seasoning is the last second trick. Mind controlling an enemy already dying from poison, fade to black, and squeezing out their utility before the body drops. I love this because it's almost maximum resource usage. Instead of the guy just falling over, he becomes a human drone for a few moments to reveal secrets, strike up a conversation, become a walking distraction, or simply walk to a spot that messes up the group's pattern. The way I fit this into a crowded room is direct. Poison 1. Let time do its work. And when I see he's at the very end, I take control and make him act out in the most inconvenient way possible, right in front of whoever I need to separate. It's the kind of play that looks like improvisation, but when you nail the timing, it gives you the feeling that you're not just being stealthy, you're directing the whole scene like a planned heist. There's one thing I always defend when it comes to quality stealth. The environment is much more lethal than your dagger, and here, that's taken seriously. You know, 'cause slight urge in the back of your mind to see a guard at the edge of an abyss and just give a little nudge? Well, embrace those intrusive thoughts. I confess I have a blast pushing about 10 unsuspecting guards into the void, not just because it saves resources, but because there's a unique satisfaction in clearing an area using only gravity in your favor. But real creativity shines when you look up. I'm a fan of games that let you prep the ground before acting, and dropping chandeliers, hooks, or crane loads onto an entire group is the pinnacle of that. It's not about fighting. It's about staging a perfect accident. You feel like a maestro of disaster, waiting for the exact moment the patrol passes under that weight to solve 3 problems with a single move, without ever exposing yourself to the risk of direct combat. Now, what separates the amateurs from the pros is using the local fauna itself. That rioter tactic, I find genius. Using glass bottles to lure mutants or insects directly to those toxic plants is one of the smartest mechanics to get rid of tough enemies. You create a fight between them, the environment does the dirty work, and you stay there, watching from the front row, spending nothing but an empty bottle and a bit of malice. If you want to see this working in practice, test this mindset in the Turquoise Dawn stage. It's the perfect place to clear entire rooms without triggering a single alarm, purely by manipulating what's already there. Instead of trying to be the invisible ninja who kills one by one with a blade, try to be the ghost that makes the scenery devour the enemies. I guarantee the sense of mastery over the map completely changes the experience. Hideouts, for me, are the kind of mechanic that separates I hid by luck from I control the room. When you understand that this corner is an invisible fortress, everything changes. You aren't just escaping the enemy's sight. You are creating a point of dominance on the map, a place where the patrol loses its rhythm and you gain command of the situation. This is where this tip shines, because it gives you a mental and tactical reset in complicated areas. And there's a detail I love. Hiding 5 bodies in a single hiding spot is the kind of thing that seems like just cleaning up, but in reality, it's information control. A body on the floor is a silent alarm. It's a search pattern that changes. A broken route, a guard who stops doing what you expected. By stashing everything in one place, you remove the evidence from the map and, as a bonus, reduce the chance of a patrol stumbling onto your work and turning stealth into chaos. Now, the best part is using the hideout as a trap. Stabbing 10 enemies from inside is the peak of I don't need to chase anyone. I wait for the moment the guard gets close, curious, with that something is wrong posture, and then you resolve it without noise, without a chase, and without exposing yourself. It looks like cowardice, but it's exactly the kind of intelligent cowardice Styx rewards. And when things go sour and the search begins, staying invisible during the sweep becomes your peace button. In complex patrols, I use this like an eraser. I let the enemies burn their time searching. I hold back my anxiety, and when the routine returns to normal, I reappear with a new plan. If you treat hideouts as tactical checkpoints, you'll start getting through areas that previously seemed impossible, because you don't need to get everything right the first time. You just need to reset better than the game. When I started treating Blades of Greed like a traversal Metroidvania, rather than just boots on the ground stealth, the game became something else entirely. The hookshot, air current parachuting, and gliding aren't just stylish ways to move. For me, they are mental shortcuts that make me look at the stage as a vertical puzzle full of secret routes, waiting for someone brave enough to step off the obvious path. The hookshot is the kind of tool that gives you instant freedom, and I always use it to gain height first and think later. Going up changes everything. It changes your field of vision, changes what can see you, changes where the noise reaches, and mainly changes your confidence to risk a route that doesn't look like a route. When in doubt, I choose the high ground, because that's almost always where the game hides the safest path. Meanwhile, the parachute in air currents and gliding are my best friends for making skips that almost feel like cheating. Instead of crossing 3 corridors full of patrols and human cameras, I prefer to look for a launch point, catch the current, and glide to a balcony, a broken walkway, or that piece of roof nobody is looking at. It's that good feeling of solving a problem without a fight, just through environmental reading and movement. And the rule I always follow is simple. Rooftops, chimneys, and crawl spaces first. Doors and stairs later. The obvious path is where the patrol was designed to snag you. So I treat over and inside as absolute priorities, even if it takes more work to find them. If you play with this mindset, you don't just stay safer. You start to feel like you're dominating the map rather than just surviving in it. Quartz is one of those resources that when you ignore it at the start, you feel the weight of it later on. I've made this mistake in games with skill trees before. I pushed progression on autopilot, only taking what was right in front of me, and suddenly a situation arrived where I needed a specific upgrade and simply didn't have the resources to unlock it. In Blades of Greed, this hurts more because the skill wheels are interdependent, meaning skipping a quartz today might lock exactly the tree you'll want tomorrow. Amber Vision is the tool that completely changes your relationship with exploration in this game. Holding the right stick and reading the environment through this lens is like changing glasses. The map stops being pretty scenery and becomes a hunting map. I use this vision almost compulsively in new areas, especially before committing to a route, because it reveals quartz hidden in places you would never check with the naked eye. Now, what I learned to do in vertical maps like the wall is to abandon the instinct to take the elevator. Elevators are passive routes. They're the path the game offers when you don't want to think. Vertical parkour, on the other hand, is where quartz hides most frequently on those ledges, broken platforms, and protrusions that have no obvious markings. If you climb instead of taking the elevator, you'll likely cross paths with 2 or 3 crystals most people leave behind. The mentality I recommend is simple. Before advancing into any new area, spend 30 seconds with amber vision and look up and around. Don't follow the floor. Quartz was distributed specifically to reward those who explore off the main path. And with full skill wheels, you feel a real jump in power and versatility that transforms complicated missions into something you master with much more confidence. The best light bulb moment I had in Blades of Greed was understanding that verticality here isn't just a pretty alternative route. It's a real shortcut, the kind that changes the order of the map. When you start ignoring elevators and doing the "I'll take the stairs to get the garrison quartz," you realize the game is practically challenging you to be stubborn. Are you going to accept the ready-made route, or are you going to climb and break the sequence? And I always choose to break it, because that's usually where the good loot and the cleanest path live. The secret is to treat any wall, rope, chimney, or crawl space as an invisible ladder. I enter a new area and immediately look for wall textures you can dash on, a hanging rope outside your field of vision, or a chimney that looks like just scenery. And suddenly, it becomes a direct line to the roof. These secret routes not only lead you to early quartz, but also put you at angles that almost no one patrols, so you go over the problem instead of solving it. After about 5 hours of getting upgrades, the parkour starts to flow in an almost therapeutic way, and that's when it gets dangerous. You start trusting the movement too much and become a skip addict. I love this point in the game, because you don't feel like you're just unlocking numbers. You feel like your Styx has become a ceiling creature, and any stage becomes a vertical playground. The more you trust the flow, the more you find paths that feel illegal. The icing on the cake is using this to play no alarm and still farm extra points, because climbing and bypassing is much quieter than crossing corridors and dealing with patrols face to face. If I can get quartz early and still leave that area without anyone entering a search state, I consider it a double victory. I advance my build and keep the rhythm of the mission in my hands. In the end, that's what a good sequence break does. You stop following the map and start commanding it. Fast travel in a stealth game is one of those features that seems secondary until the moment you need to go back to a point on the map to get a quartz you left behind, and then you understand the value of having unlocked everything earlier. In Blades of Greed, opening all the wharves and balloons in Azyria isn't just convenience, it's an investment, because you literally buy your time back. Every fast travel point you ignore is a tedious backtrack waiting to happen later. The Zeppelin via map feature is where this gets even more practical. When you're chasing quartz quests, whispers of quartz, the last thing you want is to cross half the map on foot, passing through patrols you've already cleared and corridors you've already memorized. Teleporting straight to the right spot means you enter the quest with a cool head and focus, without having spent attention and resources on the way, which makes a real difference when the mission requires precision. What I do, as a personal rule, is treat unlocking wharves as a mandatory part of the first visit to any new area. Before I dive into the mission itself, I already sweep the space looking for the fast travel point to activate. It's a habit that seems like a waste of time at first, but turns into consistent time savings from the second hour of gameplay in that region, especially when you need to revisit to complete a secondary objective. And the synchronized compass for shards closes the loop very well. With fast travel unlocked and the compass pointing the way, you transform the shard hunt from random exploration into a calculated and efficient route. I like to think of it as setting up your own GPS within the game. You eliminate the guesswork and are left only with the pleasure of collecting and evolving. It's the kind of system that, when used right, makes the whole game feel more fluid and more yours.